What is up, guys? Can't get Forsaken Exotics to save his life. Cac is here, and today I wanted to talk about the 5 things I believe the upcoming DLC Black Armory needs to have to make it a great piece of content. And the reason I'm talking about this is because the Black Armory is an extremely important event for Destiny 2. Now, why am I saying this? Well, there are 2 big reasons. But first, if you want to save money on ASTRO products and you want to get some sick merch, links in description. Was that 2 shoutouts in less than 10 seconds? Is that even possible on YouTube? Anyways, the 2 big reasons, the 2 really big reasons why Black Armory is so important is number 1, Destiny 2 really did not start out so well. And everything kind of turned around with the most recent expansion, Forsaken. And all eyes are going to be on Black Armory to see if it can keep up Forsaken's pace, to see if it can keep up Forsaken's quality, right? It's not going to be as big as Forsaken. It's just not. It's less expensive. There's going to be less content, but that content has got to be of an equal quality. And people are going to be expecting big things because the entire direction of Destiny 2 shifted with Forsaken. So that's reason number 1. Reason number 2 is that Black Armory is the first content drop of its kind ever for Destiny. Now, that's because it's not a traditional DLC. Every other DLC we've had has had some sort of campaign. It's almost always been kind of lackluster, but not with Black Armory. Black Armory and all of the other expansions coming in the annual pass will not have a traditional Destiny campaign, like a set of missions that you go through, have a storyline, and eventually beat some sort of underwhelming boss. It's just more of a content drop. It's just more of pure content that they're giving out, a certain number of, I'm sure, strikes and weapons and maps and etc. with no set campaign. And that's a big deal, that this is the first thing of its kind we're ever getting. How will fans respond? Is there going to be enough content to justify taking out the campaign? Like, are people going to be disappointed? If they are, that's not good because, again, the other 2 expansions in the annual pass are following the same model. So Black Armory does have a lot to prove when it comes out, and that's why it's such a big deal. Now, let's start here with the 5th thing I think Black Armory just needs to nail, and that is new exotics rather than returning exotics. Now, so many people are talking about the last word returning, the icebreaker, the Vex Mythoclast, yeah, sure. But even though this gets people excited to talk about the last word potentially returning and how the meta would shift around that and all of that stuff, I don't think that's necessarily the best approach to take. Every time we get a DLC for Destiny, there's a certain amount of exotics we pretty much always get. It's around 5 or 6 exotic weapons and a little bit more exotic armor pieces. And I really hope that when Black Armory comes out and we get exotics, if we get, let's say again, that 6 exotics added into the game, that 5 of them are brand new. Yes, maybe 1 can be a returning, 1 can be the last word, but I really hope to see the vast majority of the exotics we get from Black Armory being completely new. I dealt with 3 years of the last word. I'm not sure if I want that to be the best new exotic added with this new expansion. I would much rather have new things. Now, with that being said, I am totally okay with them remaking and adding back as many exotics as they want, as long as they have, again, a considerable chunk of new exotics. If they have 5 or 6 new exotics, they can add 7 or 8 returning exotics. I don't care, but as long as, you have that big chunk of brand new exotics. And the reason we're talking about specifically exotics is because they are like the marquee piece of loot. They're the most important thing you can get. They're the thing that everyone gets excited about. So I really want to see a good amount of brand new exotic weapons and armor in Black Armory. Alright, moving on from there. Number 4 is more events. Now, with Forsaken, again, it was a fantastic expansion, turned Destiny around, but Bungie removed a lot of our events that happen every so often. Trials of the 9 is gone, as is faction rallies. And at this point, when I'm making this video, you definitely notice they're gone. There's still a decent amount to do within Forsaken, But there's also a few weeks, several weeks in which your friends list really kind of cuts thin. Not many people are getting on. There's not much to do. When the corruption is at its highest and there's the Shattered Throne, you'll see an uptick. But faction rallies could really help as just an additional event that happens once a month. I really hope we see either of those things, trials or faction rallies, or something totally new returning with Black Armory. There just needs to be some sort of new monthly or bi-monthly activity to get the player base excited about returning to the game. And it really does help with longevity. Even if Black Armory adds a considerable amount of content after a few weeks and you've done the majority of that content, it kind of just comes down to very tedious grinding. I know a lot of people right now are probably at the point where they've done a lot of what they wanted to do in Forsaken, and now it's just a matter of, grinding the game and hoping and praying for a Forsaken exotic, and that can be not that fun. If there's an event like faction rallies, you're participating in that event while also doing that grinding. You're also completing your milestones for those Forsaken exotic drops or those God Roll weapon drops, while at the same time getting new loot for this event. So that's number 4. I think it's going to be pretty hard to go like several months between Black Armory and Joker's Wild with no other monthly events. Alright, moving on from there, we have point number 3, and that is new rewards added to factions. This is really important that Bungie does this, and by that I mean there needs to be a decent amount of new Vanguard weapons, and new Crucible weapons, and new Gambit weapons, and all of that stuff. Heck, I would love if they added a couple new Last Wish raid weapons. I know that last point is very wishful thinking, last wishful thinking you could say, but seriously, adding a few new rewards, well, it should be more than a few, but adding new rewards to all the different factions rejuvenates every portion of the game. Black Armory is focused around, opening the Golden Age vaults and getting these incredibly powerful weapons, and I hope that's not the absolute focus of this expansion. I hope that's not the only source of these cool new weapons. And adding only like one new weapon to Vanguard Crucible, that's just not enough. There needs to be, 3 or 4 to go after, because you add a few new Vanguard weapons and they're good archetypes, and they can get God rolls that are actually competitive and relevant in PvE and or PvP, and suddenly strikes are lit. Like, everyone's grinding strikes to get those new rolls. The same happens with Gambit. The same happens with Crucible. Heck, I would really like to see Bungie go out of the way and do the extra step of adding some new planetary rewards. Could you imagine Black Armory comes out and even just one new randomly rolled weapon for the EDZ, Nessus, Titan, all of those planets, suddenly flashpoints are way more relevant now. Grinding planets are way more relevant now because you're trying to get that new randomly rolled weapon, especially if it's a good weapon. That's actually a relatively simple thing to do. We're talking about, 5 or 6 weapons spread out in between all these different planets, but the amount at which it rejuvenates the game is substantial. Because if this isn't done, there's going to be a point, like I talked about earlier, where you do all of the main new things within this expansion. I'm sure there's going to be some new strikes with some new Nightfall exclusive rewards, but once you get, let's say there's 2 new strikes, you get those 2 new Nightfall exclusive rewards, and then you do the main activities, you get the Black Armory weapons and stuff, and then you just kind of get back to the point where you're maybe at right now, where yeah, you have a few exotics to just pray for because they're super low drop rates, but you don't really have anything to direct your play towards. You don't really have anything you really want to do and you're having a ton of fun doing, but whereas adding all these new rewards and spreading them out in between the factions keeps everything relevant. There's always something to do. Yeah, I'll do my Crucible milestones because I'm also going for that new Crucible SMG that's really good that everyone's talking about. That type of stuff is very important. Alright, moving on from there, we have point number 2, and that is raid layer rewards that matter. Black Armory is coming with a new raid layer. I'm very excited for it, but I really want to see that new raid layer remain relevant for quite a few weeks. Unfortunately, with the older raid layers, especially with Eater of Worlds, actually a great piece of content, but what were the weapons you could get? You could get the shotgun, and you could get the grenade launcher. That was it. And so you did it, you got that stuff, and then there was a bunch of armor that just looked different. You know, this was back in the days when there was no random rules. You had a bunch of armor that was completely irrelevant, and you just kind of stopped caring pretty darn quickly. You'd play it for fun a few times, you know, but that was about it. It rose and fell extremely sharply. You wanted to get the stuff it was dropping because it was high light, but once you got to that, you know, highest light level, you stopped caring immediately because you did not want the grenade launcher. So this new raid layer has really got to bring it with relevant rewards that keep you coming back week after week after week. You know, with the prestige raid layers that we saw before, we saw some exotic catalysts as random drops. That really rejuvenated that. Why not just do that right off the bat? Have an exotic weapon and or some exotic catalysts in this raid layer that you can go and earn and grind for, so it keeps that piece of content relevant for several weeks after launch, especially because the raid layer is going to be, like, arguably the biggest piece of content, so you can't have that dropping off into obscurity within a few weeks. But something else I really want to emphasize with this point, raid layer rewards that matter, is that they matter for the actual raid layer. And by that I mean, when we have the Last Wish raid, a lot of its rewards are, you know, they're not that great if you don't get amazing rolls, and especially with the armor, I was very disappointed that we saw no raid exclusive perks. Every other time we've had a raid, the armor that it rewards and even the weapons had exclusive intrinsic perks that made them matter more for that piece of content. You know, for the Wrath of the Machine raid, the armor gave you perks that made you pick up more heavy when killing Fallen. It was a Fallen focus raid that made you stronger when you were carrying the Fallen cannons, which were a big part of that raid. We saw in Vault of Glass weapons that dealt more damage to oracles, which was a big part of that raid. Why has that gone away? If you're getting raid rewards, it should make you more powerful and better in that raid. I would love to see the raid layer armor dropping with these intrinsic perks that actually help you when you are playing multiple playthroughs of this raid layer. I really want to see that come back. Alright, moving on from there. Point number 1. This is the most important thing I'd really like to see Black Armory do, and that is add new weapon perks. Now, I have this ranked at number 1 because I spent 3 years with Destiny 1 seeing what the absence of doing this did to the game. And what it does to the game is just not good. It makes content really old really fast. There was a few new perks added with the Taken King in Destiny 1, but for the most part, we saw everything recycled and recycled and recycled, and with every single expansion, things got blown through so much quicker. Now, why is that? Well, right now, you have a bunch of different weapons, and some weapons can get perks that other weapons cannot. It's a pretty good system. But if Black Armory releases, and Bungie does, you know, everything else on this list, they add new weapons for all the different factions, they add raid layer rewards, but if for most of those weapons, you're just looking for the exact same roles you're looking for now, you know, that's not great for longevity. Right now, if you want an auto rifle for PvE, what are you looking for? Rampage mainly, kill clip potentially, stuff like triple tap is always good, Zen Moment's not bad, but you know, you have your horror story, you have your tiger spite, you have a lot of good weapons. If all these new weapons are added into the game and they're just reskins basically, they belong to the exact same weapon archetypes, you're just not going to care, right? If there's 3 new 450 rounds per minute auto rifles, are you going to care if they can get the same exact perks? Like, why would you already have a horror story with Rampage and Zen Moment. Why are you looking for another 450 rounds per minute auto with Rampage and Zen Moment pretty much? Okay, maybe you get triple tap. Not really that big of a difference. So that is a huge potential problem with Black Armory and every other expansion, is that Bungie isn't brave enough essentially to experiment with brand new perks and potentially brand new weapon archetypes. And again, if you are not coming from Destiny 1, trust me, this worry is extremely founded. By the third year, after Rise of Iron, it's like every single weapon you're looking for basically the same role. Oh, does this shotgun have rifled barrel? No, trash. Does this have the thing that boosts stability? No, trash. Like, you're just always looking for those same roles on a million different weapons that are basically reskinned versions of about 9 weapons in the game, because there's only a certain amount of weapon archetypes in the game. You can't just add infinite weapons within the same archetypes of rate of fire and damage. If they all have the same rate of fire, they all have the same damage, and they all have comparable stats, the one with the best stats is just going to stand out. You get the good perks on that, and every other weapon you can add infinite 900 rounds per minute SMGs. If they all have the same perks and relatively the same stats, who cares, right? That is my big concern. And I would love to see more top tier perks actually compete with stuff like Rampage and Kill Clip and so on. What about a perk that halved the range? Just cut the range completely off, but increase damage. Same thing, increasing damage, but halving the magazine, something like that. I would actually love to see the Suros Regime spinning up perk added into the loot pool. I think that would be great for auto rifles. It could be pretty good for pulse rifles as well. You get full auto and spinning up, which makes it so that as you hold the trigger, the rate of fire gets faster and faster and faster. That could actually be a relatively competitive perk. And yes, you're taking away a little bit from an exotic, but the amount that it would shift the meta if these new weapons with Black Armory came out with perks that rivaled Rampage, Kill Clip, stuff like that. It would really, really, really differentiate these weapons and make that new loot so much more exciting. And so guys, there you have it. Those are the 5 things I believe Black Armory needs to have to be a fantastic piece of content. I really hope we see these things added, and if not in Black Armory, then in Joker's Wild. Guys, hope you enjoyed the video, found it informative, and if you did, please remember to help me out by simply rating and especially sharing this content. If you guys want to see more Destiny 2 content similar to this, don't be afraid to slap that subscribe button. If you guys want to get in touch with me and keep up to date with the latest channel activity, the best way is to follow me on Twitter at RickCacus. That's linked in the description down below, as is my Twitch channel, which you can also follow. Again, I hope you enjoyed the video, and as always, have a good day.